Hey everybody, this is Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. So I'm fired up today, y'all, and I'm fired up for a lot of different reasons. For a long period of time, Christians have used a very short list of things that they like to say to those in the LGBTQIA community in order to let them know just how unacceptable they are. So what I have done is compiled a list of things that my social media friends have heard Christians say to them, and I'm going to respond from a therapeutic standpoint. This is one of the things that is, for me, hardest as a therapist, which is to stay neutral when there's so much wrong happening in one simple statement. But I think it's really important for us to remember that there are effective ways to interact with these statements and ineffective ways to interact with these statements. Wish me luck. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe, hit the like so that I know you like the video, and comment on other things that you have heard said or responses to anything I've said, questions, anything you want to know. I want to respond. And if there's enough interest, I'll make another video on this. Okay, so the first one we are going to do is one of the most common heard ones across the board, and that is that marriage is between one man and one woman. Okay. This one is a little bit complicated because while biblical marriage is outlined in the Bible as man and woman, it is not in fact outlined by one man and one woman. In fact, many heroes in the Bible had more than one wife. There's an entire religion out there that used to be, not anymore. Polygamy is no longer a tenet of the Mormon faith, but it was at one point. And there are other religions out there that do believe it is a tenet of their faith to live a polygamous lifestyle. But I just want to use that example to explain to people that technically the Bible actually glorifies many marriages that are not just one man and one woman. That said, here's the deeper problem. In reality, when we say this to someone, we are exerting an enormous amount of presumption about how the person you're speaking to identifies and how the person that they're marrying identifies. No one should ever have their identity assumed, period. From a therapeutic perspective, if I were to have someone come in to me and say, this is what a family member told me, they would not support my marriage because it is not one man and one woman joining in matrimony, my response to them would be to think really hard about whether or not that person is someone you want in your life, because they are essentially pulling a biblical tenet out of context, an untrue one also, and suggesting that you also need to live your life by it because that's what they are comfortable with. Specifically, if you do not subscribe to the same faith that they do, it is unreasonable and unbiblical for them to assume that you would follow that rule too. Number two, very similar to number one, and that is that God created two genders, male and female. Let's have an English lesson, shall we? Because gender is not the same as sex. And when you say God created male and female genders, that is an outright untruth. Your sex is assigned at birth by the doctor. You come out, they say male, female, intersex. Sometimes you can't tell intersex right away. Okay, that's sex. Gender never has been connected to your genitals. Look it up in the dictionary. It's not connected to your genitals. That's the science lesson part of it. Gender is the experience of who you are in the world and how the world has impacted your understanding of you. It's the out and the in of the world and your experience in it. When people say that God created two genders and that's just the way it should be, that is one of the most closed-minded statements I can hear somebody make. And if I have a client that comes in to talk to me and says that they have someone in their lives that says this to them, what I want to say is run from this person. I don't say that because it's not always that easy and it's not always what they want. If you are non-binary, if you are transgender, if you are gender fluid and you outwardly express that information to someone and they do not accept it because of this argument, you do need to take a long, hard look at whether or not you want that person in your life. If it is not possible to remove them from your life, I beg you to remember that their opinion does not inform your experience, because your experience is with you and you know what you know. Genders are not actually God-made. Genders are the experiences of the person in the society around them. There are many societies that believed in upwards of 5 genders, because throughout history, people's experience of themselves based on the people around them has changed. If you do not identify within the gender binary and you do not identify with the sex as assigned to you at birth, it is so important that you remember that closed-mindedness is not your fault. It is also not your job to open people's minds. If someone you love has said something like this to you, you get to decide whether or not you continue to let them into your experience. I want to talk about a word now that is used to describe churches and faith communities as a whole, and that is the word affirming. The word affirming, first of all, means that those in power get to decide the worth of those coming to them. Okay? We speak of a church being affirming or not affirming. We're putting the church up here, and we're putting the LGBTQIA plus community down here. And they cannot be up here unless the church allows it. Excuse me? Where's that in the Bible? Affirm means those above acknowledge the worth of those below. Those in the know acknowledge the value of those who do not know yet. That's what the word affirm means. Stop using it. When we use the term affirming theology, it is meant to be kind and it is meant to be accepting. But the word affirm indicates that you have the ability to give permission to someone to exist. And you do not have the ability or the right to give someone permission to exist. All right, we're going to end this with the last one that is so lovely, and that is hate the sin but love the sinner. I have really bad news for all of the Christians out there that quote this and use this to define their biblical theology about how they relate to those in the LGBTQIA plus community. That's a Gandhi quote. Yeah. You know Gandhi, right? Yeah. That's not Jesus. And actually, it's not directly a Gandhi quote either. In reality, that is a misrepresentation of a quote from Gandhi. It's like take this line from Gandhi, which I'll put right here. That line from Gandhi, and throw a little God in there, throw a little bit of Jesus in there, and make sure people know we still love them, even though they are sinners. And then we have a rallying cry, because we are not telling someone that we don't love them, so we're living in love, but we are not going to condone their sins. We are not going to support them. We are not going to allow them to exist in leadership places or, God forbid, ordain people who are living in this sin. Here's the problem. First of all, not everyone agrees that it's a sin. Secondly, when someone identifies within the LGBTQIA plus community, that identity is part of them. You can't extract that from them. It's hard, I think, for people to understand that in order to love someone, you need to love them. The idea of hating something about someone and yet still loving them, those two don't go together, okay? That's just not an option. That's not how it works, because you can't draw out an essential form of self to then make the rest of the person acceptable. That's not how God's love works. That's not how the church's love works, is it? I mean, if it is, that's not something I want to be a part of. Why would anybody? Why do you? You can't love someone and refuse to accept parts of their essential self. It doesn't work like that. And you can't pretend it does. You have to stop pretending that it does, because it's harmful. The idea that a statement that is not in the Bible and is not even made by a Christian has informed so much of what those who oppose this community have said and thought towards an entire group of people is so bizarre to me. People who display this much misunderstanding of who you are as a person and what you can be in this world do not deserve to stand in your light and be part of its shine. They don't. You are better off without people who say these things to you. I have an old video, and on that video I said that I would tell my story at 100 subscribers. Well, if you check my channel lately, I'm a little over that now. And I'm not ready yet for a lot of reasons. But what I do need you to know is that the few people over the years within the church community who have ever assumed that they knew my truth and that they knew who I was, the only people who ever brought it to my attention did so for their own benefit or to admonish me. And the people who knew and never brought it up were the people who loved me. They were the people who were my people. And it took me a long time to get that. It's not fair that this much misunderstanding is out there and keeping people who long for community from a place that in theory should offer community. But it's also not the fault of anyone in the queer community. That's not on you. You don't have to hold the burden of the assumptions that people are making about you because of their own ignorance. That's not yours to hold. So that would be my last thought right now, is let it go. That's it for today. I hope you have a great week. I hope this has brought you a little bit of comfort or maybe a little bit of challenge depending on where you are coming from coming into this video. I will see you next week. Have a great one. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you.